Every caterpillar goes through a moment of complete dissolution. It doesn't become a butterfly. It first becomes nothing. A liquid, a formless thing inside a shell. And then it finds itself. Changed, something new, but entirely itself. What you don't know is destroying you from the inside out. Knowledge is our only defense against mind control. The secret CIA project that ran on American soil from 1953 to 1973. We're all told that it ended in 1973. The Church Committee supposedly exposed everything in 1975. But here's the thing. What if that was a cover-up? A cover-up for a much larger and much darker operation. The kind that the American people could never be allowed to know about. From the surviving pages we know, the government was doing personality erasure experiments at McGill University. A Canadian government settlement proves that it happened. A 1953 letter to Sidney Gottlieb proposing experiments on what it called presumably unwilling subjects, including, and I'm quoting, implanting false memories. The CIA called that proposal extremely fruitful, and CIA officers attending satanic rituals and combining a hallucinogen called BZ with voodoo ceremonies to produce weeks of amnesia. That was documented in a 1977 Department of Defense report. That's confirmed history, but this isn't a traditional MK Ultra video. That's already been done 100 times. I'm not trying to repeat it. But let's just remember the context here. So if in 1962, you walked up to an American on the street and said, "Hey, did you know the CIA is secretly experimenting on citizens? Yeah, they're dosing people with LSD without their knowledge, and they're running personality erasure programs in university hospitals." What do you think that person would have said? They obviously would have called you insane. They would have said there's no way the government's doing that, and that's a conspiracy theory. Well, now we know that they were wrong. It was happening. They just didn't know. So my question isn't that complicated. If a program like that was running in secret then, what makes you think you would know if something like that was running right now? Because here's the thing. That part came after 1973. If it continued, it would have been a specific focus, not general psychological experiments. Something more targeted, perhaps even on a larger scale. Trauma-based conditioning, starting early enough in childhood that the brain itself forms around it, for the purpose of creating people who carry programming that they don't know they carry. For insurance, for blackmail, for intelligence, for control. But the real question is, what is the blue butterfly? By the end of this video, you'll see it. I'm talking about a secret project that was wiped from the internet. And I'm going to show you that it never ended. This is Project Monarch. The name Project Monarch is not in any government document. The name itself may have been invented, a label invented to describe something real that operated under different internal names. But that's what makes this interesting. Because if the name is fake, then why is the topic censored? Let me show you. First, search MK Ultra. Right? You'll get Wikipedia, you'll get articles, it'll explain everything. Confirmed, documented. Alright, now search Project Monarch. Notice the difference. You don't get a Wikipedia article talking about a program, you get a specific woman's name. And the first line of the page doesn't describe the history of it, it describes her as a conspiracy theorist who makes claims about a supposed government program. Then there's an academic quote already loaded on the page from a political scientist who specializes in conspiracy theories as a cultural genre. So positioning to destroy her credibility before you even read a single word of what she's written. This is actually different for other conspiracies. Search any other conspiracy, you get debunking articles, science explainers, cultural analysis. Sure, it might be hard to find the videos, but the normal treatment for something outside the mainstream. Project Monarch doesn't get that treatment. There's not one article on it, it gets something more specific. It gets redirected to a single person with a preloaded discrediting mechanism. Everything else is essentially wiped on Google. Basically, the result isn't "this is dumb and not real." The result is, "here is the person you shouldn't believe without even understanding what she said," and then some random butterfly results. Okay, but what's strange is Google knows exactly what you're looking for when you type in Project Monarch. But look at the rest of the results. A butterfly science center, an app, a monarch migration tracking study. It's not even acknowledging the conspiracy. It doesn't do what it does for every other conspiracy topic, giving you these skeptic articles. It does one thing and one thing only. It sends you to Cathy O'Brien. What you might not know is that Project Monarch is a pre-internet topic. It was being discussed in 1995. That's over 30 years of material. There were entire YouTube channels devoted to this before the 2010s filter. Hundreds if not thousands of videos. So if you remember the old internet, you know this genre was everywhere. Album covers, music videos, celebrity photo shoots, the butterfly imagery on everything. Now if you try to find it, it's been erased. So the question is, what if MKUltra didn't stop in 1973? What if it evolved for the purpose of creating people who were not aware of their programming? This is what the internet has termed Project Monarch. The claim is that Project Monarch is a secret subset of MKUltra that continued after it was officially shut down. The focus is called alters, separate personality states that can be triggered and controlled independently from the person's primary conscious identity. The result is a person who doesn't know they carry it. The symbol the internet associates with all of this is the butterfly, specifically the monarch butterfly. A monarch is a ruler, a king, someone with total authority over those beneath them. If you were online in 2010, then you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's everywhere. The butterfly, the checkerboard floors, the one-eye symbolism, the kitten print. Then around 2016, the genre just started disappearing. But keep in mind, the internet didn't come up with any of this. Before YouTube, there was a woman named Candy Jones. That was her stage name. Her real name was Jessica Wilcox. She was a successful model and a radio host. Under hypnotherapy, she revealed she had an alter named Arlene Grant, a separate personality that had worked for the CIA without her primary identity ever knowing about it. Her husband documented everything. The book came out in 1976, before the internet, before Reddit, and YouTube. And then there's the woman who comes up every single time you search this topic. But she didn't find this on the internet, she lived it. Her name is Cathy O'Brien. Yes, the one result that comes up when you search this. Well, let's take a look at what she actually says. In 1995, she published a book called Transformation of America, written with her partner, Mark Phillips. What's interesting about this is, it's not like she posted this on some blog. She literally submitted it as a formal congressional disclosure. And the title isn't Transformation of America, it's Transformation. Also, her co-author Mark Phillips spent decades as a DoD subcontractor in behavior modification research. He signed an oath of secrecy. That's the man who co-wrote this book, the man who opens it with a thesis. The thesis is bigger than just one survivor's story. He's arguing that mind control operates at two levels. The hard tier is what happened to Cathy. Trauma-based conditioning starting in childhood. Compartmentalized identities. We're talking about controlling people, from abuse victims to politicians and celebrities. The soft tier is what's happening to everyone else. You. You are under a trance. Look at the cover of the book. It's a map of the United States with radio waves emanating across it. In her book, she says, quote, "To every American unaware of the mind control atrocities prevailing in this country, what Americans don't know is destroying them from the inside out." End quote. So Wikipedia has her titled as a conspiracy theorist. But you can see what they're doing. They're trying to show you the most craziest things that she says. But here's what Wikipedia left out. If she was in a room with handlers running documented trauma-based conditioning, then what she experienced was whatever they staged her for. Performances designed to create memories so bizarre that no one would even believe them. The most effective suppression is when the witness tells the truth, and the truth sounds insane. What she described was not abstract. She named specific programs, specific handlers, specific locations, specific politicians, childhood trauma conditioning starting before age 5, compartmentalized personality states that could be triggered and controlled, a network that ran through military intelligence, through entertainment, and through political circles. But here's what specifically matters for this video. She described the conditioning architecture, and it has a template, a specific framework that programmers use to structure the alter system in child subjects. Are you ready to go down the rabbit hole? The blueprint is Alice, Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland from 1865. She said this was not a metaphor. This is the literal programming framework used across facilities, across decades, producing people whose primary identity has no access to what was built underneath it. Kathy O'Brien went public in 1995. She and Mark Phillips submitted it directly to Congress as former disclosure, and Wikipedia calls her a conspiracy theorist? Doesn't even mention that. When she went public in 1995, there was already an organization whose entire function, whether you think that was intentional or not, was to ensure that testimony like hers could never be taken seriously in court. The False Memory Syndrome Foundation was founded in 1992. Phillips names it in the book. He called it a well-funded organization with very questionable agendas. The academic confirmation that 2 CIA MKUltra researchers sat on its founding board didn't come out until years later. They named it before anyone had documented why. 2 of the researchers on its founding board had something specific in common. Both had previously worked on CIA MKUltra sub-projects, and one of them, remember that 1953 letter I mentioned at the start of the video? The one proposing experiments on presumably unwilling subjects? The one the CIA called extremely fruitful? That was him, the same man. He was also separately appointed Jack Ruby's court psychiatrist in 1964. He declared Ruby mentally incompetent. The foundation provided expert witnesses in court, academics who testified that trauma survivors' memories are inherently unreliable, without ever having to engage the content of what those survivors were saying. That ran for 27 years. But you know what's crazy? The one who testified in trial after trial that recovered memories cannot be trusted was a funded member of a research network that Epstein personally bankrolled. She testified as the first defense expert at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial against Epstein's own victims. The foundation dissolved on December 31st, 2019, the same year Epstein died, supposedly. This is the denial machine. But for now, what can we actually verify? In 1995, at a formal government advisory hearing called the ACHRE, the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, 3 women testified under oath about CIA childhood mind control experiments conducted at Tulane University. A law professor named Alan Shefflin went on record afterward and said, quote, "Some of the information provided is absolutely true and could not have been derived from any published source." End quote. That testimony was excluded from the final report. Official reason? The subjects were too young. Now I want to talk about the person with the largest voice talking about this right now. Candace. Candace Owens has said things about this topic that no mainstream figure with her reach has ever said. In February of this year, she named Project Monarch directly on camera. She said what began as Project Monarch in Germany ultimately became MKUltra in America. She said there's zero reason to believe it stopped. So even she's saying this operation never ended. But here's the thing. Something isn't really sitting quite right with me. I just want to point out some things that you said because it ties in directly with what I'm investigating. I believe we're actually looking into the same thing. So her new series is The Bride of Charlie. In her opening episode, she calls it The Wrinkle in Time, she framed the origin of Monarch in Germany. The implication is that it's foreign, imported, something that infected America from the outside. This is documented history. Operation Paperclip brought Nazi researchers into American intelligence programs deliberately. MKUltra was built here, funded by American money, run by American officers. But it almost feels like the video makes this point of origin at Germany because, well, think about it, it moves the responsibility to the other side of the ocean. Okay, not that weird, but I noticed that. And then she made an episode a while ago called Project Looking Glass. Now immediately that title caught my eye without even watching it because if you know this community, that title suggests Alice in Wonderland programming. The looking glass is the transition mechanism between primary identity and the alter, which is exactly what O'Brien was talking about. I suspect that someone on her team knew this and used this video as a means to cover the subject up. I'm not saying that's true. I don't know. But I'm saying that's what it seems like. Because look, she opens it with something real. She's going through the claim that Charlie Kirk was surrounded by handlers his entire life. People who shaped everything about him from the beginning. That is real and a valid thread. But then, out of nowhere, the episode pivots to a CIA program based on technology stolen from ancient Sumerians that let operators view future timelines. So CIA time travel. What's going on here? I thought she was going to talk about Project Monarch. This is the part that doesn't sit well with me. Listen to what she says in this episode.
They hate light. Alyssa writes, Kathy O'Brien would be a powerful interview. You have a platform to give her a stronger voice. I just finished her book, Transformation of America. Yes, I've heard about Kathy O'Brien. There are so many people that I could speak to. I know about Project Monarch. We've spoken about it on this show as being the precursor to what the Nazis did here, which was all about traumatizing children.
So you do know about her, and you just so happened to mention her in the Looking Glass video? You know about Project Monarch. But I don't see why you haven't connected this to Erica. Is Erica and Alice? Now here's what Candace is actually investigating right now. She's looking at Romania, specifically at Erica Kirk and her charity, Romanian Angels, which operated in Constanța, Romania beginning in 2012. Romania is in the Epstein files. There's a JP Morgan wire instruction where Epstein personally directs his banker to send $10,000 to Banca Transylvania in Iași, Romania, for, and I'm quoting, the girl from Romania. In another email, he writes to billionaire Tom Pritzker about the girl from Romania that you met at my house and asks if there's a starting position at one of the Pritzker's Hyatt hotels. Now look at Erica's charity work in Constanța. She personally thanks a US Army colonel by name in her own promotional video. Colonel Otto Buscher III, who commanded the Black Sea Area Support Team at Mihail Kolgani-Shanu Air Base. In 2019, a former base translator filed a criminal complaint alleging Buscher ran a prostitution and trafficking ring out of that base involving girls as young as 16. The investigation was closed because the NATO Status of Forces Agreement gave jurisdiction to the United States. He was never prosecuted. This is the colonel she's thanking on camera for helping deliver gifts to orphans? In January 2026, Erica launched her speaking tour at Harvest Christian Fellowship, Pastor Greg Laurie's church. 4 months earlier, 22 federal lawsuits were filed against that church alleging that former pastor Paul Havsgard sexually abused and trafficked children at church-sponsored homes in Romania from 1998 to 2008. The lawsuits cite the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Church leadership was warned in 2004 that Havsgard was a PDF. They kept him because he was, and this is from the filing, too important to fundraising. Now here's the part Candace almost found. Her Romania research led to a DoD contractor. And she's reading this company description aloud on camera. She says, disruptive cyber technologies for applications in relationship to the way humans think. But what's weird about it is, after reading this, she starts randomly laughing and calls it a word pretzel. It almost seems like her script told her to laugh there because that reaction made no sense. It wasn't a word pretzel. Disruptive cyber technologies in relationship to the way humans think. That is a description of programmable cognition. That's what this video is about. She was staring directly at it and she laughed. Okay, but that company is called Easy Tech International. It was founded by Lori Francve. That's Erica Kirk's mother. So listen to this and tell me if you think it's weird.
Relative to sustainability of critical infrastructure protection. Blah, 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 supercalifragilistic, espialidocious, big word, sustainability, sustainability, big word, sustainability, vocabulary word, ta-da, technology, tech, it's so high tech, you have to have a highly technical BS mind to think that that makes any sense. Like I said, these people are not smarter than you, that ruler than us, they're just more corrupt, but that's absurd, nothing, it's just a word pretzel. We're in a pretzel, she's saying a lot of words, and she keeps throwing in sustainability. In the middle, it's like sustainability, sustainable functional way to monitor the sustainable functional technologies and working with the Department of Defense to do supercalifragilistic things. Okay, Lori. Okay. Love to interview her or Erica to deeply understand it. I just want to get real cerebral with them, you know? Explain it to me like I'm two.
Well, it does make sense. Let me explain it to you. So by episode 3, she reveals that Lori is Erica's mother. Lori runs DoD-connected companies. The family's chasing government defense contracts. Fort Huachuca is an intelligence base. There's a web of shell companies. Then, by episode 6, she reads the literal description of mind control technology, disruptive cyber technologies for applications in relationship to the way humans think, from the company's bio, and she's doing this on camera, and she just laughs it all off. You had all the pieces. The DoD contracts, the intel base, now the company description that literally describes programmable cognition, and you're just gonna laugh? Either she doesn't understand what she's reading, or she was told to move past it. There's no third option that makes sense here. Erica's public narrative is that she was raised by a single mom. Her mother founded a DoD defense contractor. Her mother runs the E3 Tech Group, which builds EMP-hardened technology for the Department of Defense, tested at Fort Huachuca, a military intelligence base. Her father was a program research director at the same company. Her grandfather, Carl Kenneth Francve, was a U.S. Army captain with a Silver Star and a Bronze Star, who served as vice president of manufacturing at the American Bank Note Company, the firm that printed currency for over 100 countries. So 3 generations, defense, intelligence, and currency? Before she even married Charlie Kirk, Erica was in the entertainment industry. Miss Arizona USA 2012, a Trump-owned pageant. She's even in a country music video. She worked as a model, an actress, and a casting director in New York and China. At 24, she appeared in an EMP documentary alongside former CIA Director James Woolsey, so in her mother's exact field. She starred in an unreleased film called November Renaissance, about nanotechnology, mind control, and programmed assassins. Parts of that film were shot at Fort Huachuca, the same military intelligence base where the mother has DoD contracts. Right country, right target. The CIA can time travel, But the idea that Project Monarch is happening right now, affecting every single American, is completely insane, right? The thing is, what if this is beyond Erica? Imagine being born into this system. And I'm not saying she's innocent. I'm just saying, I think you and Erica have more in common than you realize. You both came through the same pipeline. You want to solve this? The documents are here. The EFTA IDs are on the screen. And it's not from Germany. Not time travel. If you're free to follow where they actually go, follow them. Now let me show you the real looking glass. A modern 2026 example of how Project Monarch is happening today. This is why we need to keep this knowledge alive. It's time to wake up. Once you see the blueprint, you can't ever go back. Have you guys been seeing Alyssa Liu? At first, honestly, I thought nothing of it. She has good energy, it was a creative performance. I mean, there's no reason to deny that. She just won gold at the 2026 Winter Olympics. First American woman to win individual figure skating gold in over 20 years. So this is going viral right now, but I want to talk about the gala performance. This is the one that's really going viral. I'm sure you guys have seen it. The one that gets the edits. She skated to Stateside by Pink Panthers, and she copied the choreography from the music video. Notice the blue dress. Her name is Alyssa, 5 letters. That's etymologically linked to Alice. Now you may think that's a reach. Well, let's do a breakdown of Pink Panthers' new Stateside video, because by the end of this video, it will be clear as day. So this is what America represents. This is literally happening right now. This is what we're promoting at the Olympics? If you don't believe it, go watch the Stateside video if you haven't. Pink Panthers is presented as a sexualized robotic doll, posed behind glass in a shop window, on display, lifeless until the music starts. Guys, this is clearly MK Ultra. You know what to look for now that I showed you in part 4. If you're in denial, go watch part 4 first. The thing is they've gotten way better at hiding it, but still, they're just too on the nose. This is Alice programming. You see the checkerboard floor? 2 secret pillars? They know you know. They're just being more creative with it, taking you behind the veil, behind the stage. Instead of black and white for the checkerboard, they did red and white, and the black and white instead gets added to the cross. Notice the keys in the background. It's the same symbolism, they're just using proxy swapping. Regardless, this is clearly sexualized. What's the issue? The issue is the sexualized doll imagery mixed with MK Ultra imagery, and it's being promoted to young women through Alyssa. They are singing a song, and subconsciously, they are programmed, but the surface level personality is not aware of it. In the room, there are several phallic symbols. And notice the blue star. Now you may think that's a reach if I told you that's hinting towards the blue butterfly. But wait. This entire music video is disorienting, fast-paced flashes, and subliminal sexual imagery that you can only see frame by frame, like with this blonde on the pole. Go watch the video, that's only up for a few frames. Is it right? I don't know, yet you're taking my control. Listen to the lyrics. They're telling you, literally. Girls being trafficked around the world, mind-controlled sex slaves with alters, hidden personalities, aka Project Monarch. That's what this video is encoded with. This blonde woman, Zara, represents Pink Panthers' alter trigger ego. When activated, she becomes Alice. Notice all the postcards. The postcards? Those are the real story. She's being pushed around the world. This is the American dream? The lyrics aren't even that coded. She opens freezing outside. Her coat, her identity, her cover is inside. She left it behind. She's exposed. She's going stateside, flying to America for a guy. But it's stateside. She's entering a new state of mind. And they connect the two on purpose. You can be my American. Who's the American? She's British, being transported. The American is the handler. She wants him to be her identity anchor. I tracked your plane ride for when you're in tonight. She's monitoring his flight schedule? That's subject tracking before the handler's arrival. Never been abroad before, now I'm knocking through your door. Naivety, first time crossing. No one treats me this way. That's the recruitment line, the grooming. Are all boys out here the same? Yeah, because it's not about individual men. It's a system. And she's flying intercontinental. Not just to America, across the continents. They had the audacity to make Alyssa dance this in front of millions of people. Don't believe it? Then explain to me why this video is filled with butterflies. You can't run from it. This is Project Monarch. At the 1 minute mark, the entire music video gets flooded with butterflies. Right around the time, the blonde girl comes in. Alice, the trigger personality. Her altar for her sexual doll state. That's not metamorphosis. That's mind control symbolism. Don't you get it? This is so much bigger than just the files. This is the mass sexual programming of women. A girl named Alyssa, Alice in a blue dress, with striped hair, at the most watched sporting event on earth, performing a song built around sexual monarch control. And the entire world watched it and applauded. She's so amazing. That shows you how layered this is. This isn't new. It's been in your face for over 60 years. Alice programming. However, what you just saw with Pink Panthers belongs to a specific category of programming. The Alice programming has a wide range of application, but for sex programming, the internet has a specific name for this type of programming. It's called kitten programming. The programming has a hierarchy, like a monarch, not just for the masses, but also for celebrities. Let's start with the first mind-controlled celebrity, Marilyn Monroe. Now what's interesting is, this personality was an entirely separate being from Norma Jean Mortensen. She referred to Marilyn in the third person. She said Marilyn would appear when she chose to let her out. It seems quite clear, even with the information available to the public, that she was exploited and subjected to mind control by powerful handlers. To what degree is for you to decide? In her youth, there were reports that she was SA'd as a teenager and forced to move out. This is around the age of 11. Now this isn't evidence, but I thought it was strange. There are some photos online of her as a child, with people describing it as a very Alice-like dress. It's not an Alice dress, but it's similar. Before she was famous, she worked at a burlesque house in Los Angeles. Anton LaVey, who would later found the Church of Satan, was the house musician. His own biography documents the relationship. Basically, the conspiracy community believes that Anton was a Hollywood programmer, and he did the same thing with Jane Mansfield, who was known as the working man's Marilyn Monroe. Interestingly, both Monroe and Mansfield were part of a Blue Book model agency. Blue Book. So she was recruited as a model. Take note of that because this story is the same story. And from there, they completely transformed her. Look at the before and after. Her whole aesthetic changed. And now she has the platinum blonde, right? The first dumb blonde. You don't think that was by design? The gentlemen prefer blondes, right? The full Monroe story is insane. By the mid-1950s, Monroe's world had narrowed to 4 people: her acting coach, Lee Strasberg, 3 psychiatrists, Margaret Hohenberg, Marianne Criss, and Ralph Greenson. Her housekeeper even described her days as her doctor's appointments and her acting lessons were virtually all she had to look forward to. So contact with her biological family was blocked. Relatives who tried to reach her were turned away. The visits escalated in frequency, and she deteriorated. When she died in August 1962, her estate was distributed as follows: Lee Strasberg, 75%, Dr. Marianne Criss, 25%. Her will was contested by her longtime business manager on grounds of undue influence, but the challenge failed. The people who isolated her, controlled her, and ran her sessions legally owned her in death. But this is the crazy part. She actually left a document, and it's called The Surgeon Story. Apparently she wrote it herself, and it's in poem form. Some describe it as a nightmare, but her family researcher describes it as her account of a programming session with Strasberg and Hohenberg specifically. Read what she wrote. "Best finest surgeon, Strasberg, to cut me open, which I don't mind since Dr. H has prepared me, given me anesthetic." She doesn't mind? She's been prepared. That's compliance language, not nightmare language. Everything in the room is white. In fact, I can't see anyone, just white objects. And there's absolutely nothing there. The only thing that came out was so finely cut sawdust, like out of a Raggedy Ann doll. The patient existing of complete emptiness. Sawdust where a soul should be? She writes about herself as a doll, complete emptiness. In 1961, Dr. Criss convinced Monroe to check into Paint Whitney's psychiatric ward. She was told it was for rest. Well, it was a locked ward. She actually wrote to Greenson from inside, saying, "I felt I was in some kind of prison for a crime I hadn't committed." When she wouldn't comply, 2 men and 2 women carried her by all fours to the 7th floor. She was the world's most famous woman in a padded cell, put there by the psychiatrist who would inherit 25% of her estate. But there's one more insane detail. Monroe had 2 failed pregnancies. The official account is miscarriage. In Lena Pepitoni's book, Marilyn's own words tell a different story. Quote, "Don't take my baby." So they take my baby from me, and I never saw it again. End quote. Does that remind you of anything? So let's break down more celebrities with this pattern. Step 1. Discovery by a handler figure at a young age. Step 2. Construction of a named persona, a separate identity with its own name, its own costume, its own behavioral profile. Step 3. A butterfly and/or Alice symbolism appears, and the branding, the tattoos, the album artwork, the imagery, it shows up after the handler relationship is established. Step 4. A public dissolution, a breakdown, a hospitalization, a very visible unraveling. Step 5. Institutionalization, conservatorship, legal control, or even death. The butterfly marks step 3. Not freedom, containment at peak control. Here are the most famous women in the music industry that you all know who fit this pattern exactly. Whitney Houston was signed at 19 by Clive Davis, who kept a controlling hand in her career for decades. She had a suspicious death in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton in 2012, and that night, a Grammy party was already running at the same hotel. It continued as scheduled. Her daughter, Bobby Christina, was found in a bathtub 3 years later. Mariah Carey signed to Columbia Records at 18, and she later called it a music prison. Security cameras in every room, armed guards, zero freedom, total control of her image. She named the estate where she was kept Sing Sing. And when she finally left, she named her comeback album Butterfly. We all know the Britney Spears story. Well, she got a butterfly tattoo in 2003. She described herself, at the height of her commercial control, as a sort of child robot. Beyoncé publicly named a second personality she accesses on stage. She called it Sasha Fierce. And she described exactly how the switch works. Usually, when I hear the chords, when I put on my stilettos, then Sasha Fierce appears, in my posture and the way I speak, and everything is different. Rihanna was 16 when Jay-Z signed her to Def Jam. Under my umbrella? Do you see the meaning? In Miley Cyrus. This is probably one of the best monarch examples if you know her full history. Obviously, she's Hannah Montana. That's her Alice. Stefani Germanotta has an entire hierarchy of altars. Her music videos contain clear occult symbolism. Her performing altar is called Lady Gaga, and above that, she's Mother Monster. So an entity that sits above the performer. She literally tells you, go rewatch Bad Romance. The music video shows an asset kidnapped, drugged, and sold to a buyer. Over 1 billion views. Kesha's case is the most legally documented handler-asset relationship in recorded music history. Her 2017 album, Rainbow, ends in butterfly imagery. Nicki Minaj has a male altar she calls Roman Zelensky. In 2012, she also released a song called Marilyn Monroe, and the video shows her embodying Monroe. Taylor Swift built a decade-long persona as the innocent country pop girl next door. In 2017, she staged its murder. The "Look What You Made Me Do" video opens in a graveyard, a birdcage, a clone tower of all prior Taylor cells, each one eliminated. The bridge is the direct announcement. The old Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because she's dead. 1 billion views. Billie Eilish. She released her first single at 14, was signed to Interscope at 15, and was 17 when Bury a Friend was shot. In it, multiple sets of hands in black rubber gloves inject unlabeled syringes into her spine. She's dragged across the floor. The song is written from the perspective of the monster under your bed. Melanie Martinez. She built her entire career on this template. The Crybaby album in 2015. Then in 2019, K-12, children sent to a facility where they're medicated, monitored, and shaped. Checkerboard floors throughout. Wide Awake from Katy Perry. Is that an inversion of Eyes Wide Shut? 2012. Over 1 billion views. In the video is an explicit Alice in Wonderland sequence. A Wonderland maze. A child self waiting inside. Poison fruit. A mirror. And then a butterfly garden. Rihanna, S&M, 2011. Checkerboard rooms. A handler leash. Bondage throughout. Banned in 11 countries. This mind control destroys the sacred feminine within the female victim, turning them into nothing more than a piece of meat. Is this what America stands for? It's not just women either. Men have gone through beta programming as well. Think about it. She named herself after the agency, Candace Intelligence Agency. The crew neck is $60. Okay, but who's her husband? Her husband's closest friend is Andrew Tate, probably the second most famous accused trafficker in the world. There's a photo of Farmer and Tate on the wall of Tate's Romanian mansion. So they're friends. Well, Tate's father was a US Air Force intelligence linguist at Field Station Berlin, part of the Five Eyes Echelon network. He publicly claimed CIA. Keep in mind, Andrew moved to Romania, and when the charges came out, they went, and an entire movement was built. The old self dies, community replaces family, hierarchy with levels you ascend, chemical modification, and at the top, the monarch, the red pill pipeline. It's the same architecture. It's just for men. Wanna be in the club? Wanna be the top G? And by the way, this isn't a beta male take. The irony is, red pill content is actual MK Ultra beta programming. I'm just giving you the esoteric take. And it doesn't stop there. It's all over Hollywood. The Manchurian Candidate is the best example to start with. What's insane is the first version even tells you that this is Alice programming. So it's undeniable. That's the template. If you want to see this clearly, then watch the 2004 version. A politician engineered to become president with no knowledge that he's been programmed. One phrase spoken aloud, and he's gone. A separate personality surfaces, carrying separate memories, executing instructions the primary identity will never remember receiving. The 2004 version was science fiction. The original is based on real MK Ultra history. Silence of the Lambs, 1991. The cover is a death head hawk moth covering a woman's mouth. A young woman being conditioned, shaped, and used by an older male genius who understands the human mind at a level no one else does. He gives her information in exchange for pieces of herself. That's the handler dynamic. Dollhouse, 2009. Human beings with their personalities wiped and reprogrammed for clients, given names from the NATO phonetic alphabet: Alpha, Sierra, Victor, Echo, and they don't know their own triggers. Fox canceled it after 1 season. Black Swan, 2010. A dancer loses herself in a role, and a second personality emerges that can do things her primary self cannot. Special abilities. The transformation is treated as an achievement. Nita's bedroom has butterfly posters and a white rabbit next to the window. Those aren't random design choices. A Clockwork Orange, 1971, Kubrick. The government straps Alex down, forces his eyes open, drugs him, and subjects him to aversion conditioning until his personality is fundamentally altered. They don't punish him, they reprogram him. And Kubrick showed you the exact method, step by step. That was 1971, 2 years before MK Ultra was officially ended. The Butterfly Effect, 2004. A man discovers he has suppressed entire traumatic episodes from his childhood with no conscious memory of them. When he learns to access those memories, he finds versions of himself that he never knew existed. The whole film is built on one idea. The childhood events you don't remember are the ones shaping everything. Okay, now there are so many more, literally in the hundreds. We're not going to break it all down right now. We're just going to go straight to the movie that lays it all out for you, because there's always a movie that lays it all out. Sure, you could say that all of this was just creative design choices. And sure, let's admit that the butterfly is a popular design. Absolutely. We can acknowledge that, while also being fair. Let me show you a movie that straight up tells you the secret. I'm not the one telling you. This movie did it in 1973. You know what it's called? Papillon. Steve McQueen. It's the French word for butterfly. On the surface, it's a prison escape film. A man wrongly convicted, shipped to a penal colony in French Guiana, who spends the entire film trying to break free. Most people who watch this film walk away thinking it's about the human spirit that can't be caged. The butterfly is the man who survives. That's been the standard reading for 50 years. But the film tells you something else entirely if you listen to what the characters actually say. 37 minutes in, another prisoner explains the local economy. There is a species of butterfly on the island called the blue morphus. The prisoners catch them, and a man named Richter buys them from the guards. The butterfly's wings, okay, and this is a direct quote from the film, are used for dye in making American currency. So the prisoners catch the butterflies, the operator sells them, the guards get their cut, and the product becomes American money. Now look who's catching them. Papillon, a man with a butterfly tattoo on his chest. A man who was convicted for killing a pimp. His stated crime is literally eliminating a handler in the trafficking world. And his partner, Degas, is a counterfeiter of government bonds. The author Henri Charrière later admitted that Degas never actually existed. He made him up. Degas is an alter, a second personality invented by the primary to handle the money, to provide the cover story, to be the face that interacts with the system while the operator stays hidden behind it. This is coded monarch programming. And Charrière told us himself that he created one. In the place they sent him to break his mind, it's called Devil's Island. That's where the facility is. And the warden spells it out. We are not priests, we are processors. A meat packer processes live animals into edible ones. We process dangerous men into harmless ones. This we accomplish by breaking you physically, spiritually, and here. Then he points to his head, his mind, his identity. That's monarch programming, right there in a Hollywood film released in 1973. The same year, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files. So, a man with a butterfly on his chest catches blue butterflies that become American money. His financial partner is a fabrication. The facility that holds him openly describes itself as a processing operation designed to break the human mind. The blue butterflies are the product. The operator's the one with the mark? So is the movie called Butterfly because he was released into the world with a tattoo that identifies what system made him? This film came out 53 years ago. How do you explain that? The blue Morphous butterfly funds the American dollar? What is this film actually saying? And if it is, what does that tell you about who's been catching them? There's another piece to this. The checkerboard floor. Go look at production design across major music videos from 1985 to 2010. The black and white checkerboard floor appears with a frequency that cannot be accidental. Madonna, Michael Jackson, Katy Perry, Britney Spears, countless more. The same visual across decades of elite entertainment production. This is obviously Masonic. It goes back to 1717, and the first codification of it in Masonic text is from 1727. It's the foundational floor of initiation. And it is the floor of the looking glass world in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Alice steps through the mirror and enters a world organized as a chessboard. She's a pawn. The Red Queen tells her she starts on the second square, and if she reaches the 8th, she becomes a queen. So she doesn't pick her path, she gets moved from square to square, meeting whoever occupies that space, following rules she didn't write. The whole book is a chess game, and Alice is a piece in it. It's the Masonic initiation floor, Carroll's chessboard. It's the same thing. The subject moves through a controlled grid and doesn't know who's playing. This is the Project Monarch template, and it goes back to 1865, when a mathematics professor at Oxford named Charles Ludwig Dodson, writing under the pen name Lewis Carroll, published a book for children. Carroll was a member of the Society for Psychical Research, an organization that formally investigated occult phenomena, theosophical claims, and paranormal experience. He owned dozens of texts from the occult tradition. The checkerboard in the Alice books, the Masonic mosaic pavement, was not a coincidence of the Victorian tile fashion. Carroll was a member of an institution that knew exactly what that floor meant. Aleister Crowley, who by the 1910s was running one of the most significant initiatory magical schools of the 20th century, made both Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass required reading for his initiates as sacred text, as maps of the initiatory process. What's interesting is mainstream academic psychology already agrees with this. They just never asked who might use that map on purpose, because they're not going to connect that Kathy O'Brien, the woman who testified in 1995 about being inside the program, breaks this down a little bit differently, as someone who was taken through it. But her breakdown doesn't use Jungian language, it uses programmer language. The rabbit hole is the induction sequence, the technique used to initiate the dissociative state. Going through the looking glass is the transition between the primary identity and the alter. The caterpillar asking, "Who are you?" is the identity dissolution stage, where the subject's sense of self is systematically destabilized before a new identity is constructed. The Red Queen is the punishing authority. The Mad Hatter is the handler. The Cheshire Cat is the controller behind the handler, the one who gives instructions and then disappears. She said this was not a metaphor. This is the literal template used across facilities across decades. The academics mapped it from the outside, but she described it from the inside. And in the same tradition Carol was reading, a woman named Alice Bailey was receiving transmissions from a figure she called the Tibetan that would eventually fill 30 volumes of esoteric doctrine. She founded her publishing house in 1922 and called it the Lucifer Publishing Company. She renamed it to Lucis Trust in 1925. Not only was she the first to use the term New Age, but Lucis Trust today now has consultative status at the United Nations. Its meditation room has been in the UN building since 1952. I just find it interesting that her name is Alice, and notice this on her wiki page. Her autobiography states that at the age of 15, on June 30th, 1895, Bailey was visited by a stranger, a tall man dressed in European clothes and wearing a turban, who told her she needed to develop self-control to prepare for the certain work he planned for her to do. This turned out to be the creation and publication of 19 books, together with educational and meditation work that reached practically all the countries of the world. Carol read the occult text, Crowley made the Alice books sacred reading for his initiates, Bailey named her publishing house after Lucifer, and all three traditions share the same symbols: the checkerboard, the looking glass, and the butterfly. Just a coincidence? Here's an interesting fact. It's Greek etymology. The word psyche, spelled out, has two meanings in ancient Greek. It means soul, and it means butterfly. But those aren't two different definitions. It's the same word describing the same thing. Homer used it to mean the ghost of a departed person, the soul leaving the body. In Greek mythology, the soul was depicted as the butterfly leaving the body at death. The goddess Psyche, the personification of the human soul, is depicted with butterfly wings. The connection between butterfly and soul in the Western tradition is supposedly 2,000 years old. Am I a man who dreamt of being a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming of being a man? The monarch butterfly's migration maps the soul's journey. The caterpillar becomes nothing, completely dissolves inside the chrysalis, and reconstitutes as something capable of flight. The program didn't invent the symbol was already doing the work. Okay, but it gets crazy, because in 1945, Walt Disney hired Aldous Huxley to write the screenplay for Alice in Wonderland. Aldous Huxley, who had written Brave New World. Huxley wrote the treatment and the draft. Disney rejected it as too literary, but used the same source text for the 1951 film. Walt Disney was an FBI informant from 1940 until his death in 1966. Disney released Alice in Wonderland in 1951. And the CIA launched MK Ultra in 1953. Keep that in mind. A great example of the Alice template is The Wizard of Oz, 1939. You guys know the movie, so I'm not going to break it down. But how does it start? A traumatic event, a tornado. And when it's over, she wakes up in another world. Kansas is the baseline. Oz is the altered state. Over the Rainbow moves her between the two. She's guided down a specific path toward a man behind a curtain who controls everything. And to get back, she clicks her heels 3 times and repeats a phrase. There's no place like home. Do you get it? 3 repetitions, click, then the subject returns to the baseline. Remember how the movie ends? She wakes up in her bed, and the same men from her dream are all standing around her, staring down at her. The men in Oz were the men in her real life the entire time. She just didn't know it. And keep in mind, the girl who sang Over the Rainbow, Judy Garland. She was 16. MGM had her on amphetamines to keep her awake for 18-hour shoots, and barbiturates to put her to sleep afterwards. They controlled what she ate, what she weighed, her entire life. She died at 47 from an overdose. O'Brien documented Over the Rainbow by name as a trigger phase used in programming sessions. The 1939 film gave an entire generation the same internal landscape. Okay, but what makes this so insane is this connects with the files. Jeffrey Epstein named his trust the Caterpillar Trust and the Butterfly Trust, set up in sequence. There is a wire instruction document in federal court submitted bank records where money moves from the Caterpillar Trust directly into the 2013 Butterfly Trust. The caterpillar feeds the butterfly. The conditioning sequence made into a legal financial cascade? EFTA 014-23947. The Butterfly Trust had a JP Morgan suspicious activity report filed on it for $1.08 billion, flagged for sex trafficking. Ghislaine Maxwell, whose own Deutsche Bank account was called Butterfly, was the original founding beneficiary. She was quietly removed in November 2014, 4 years before any arrest, as civil lawsuits began to mount. Then there's this, EFTA 01660651, an FBI tip log with someone reporting they were taken to Epstein's island by boat and given what they described as chemically induced amnesia. EFTA 0193598, a message from February 2014, where Epstein personally texts Joy Ito about trying TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, for what he calls, and I'm quoting, trauma amnesia. Trauma amnesia is the specific mechanism described in Monarch survivor testimony. And look at this. On September 14, 2014, Peter Thiel forwarded Jeffrey Epstein a memo from his personal physician at Thiel Capital. Subject line, quick feedback from my on-staff health expert. The memo analyzes GHB versus benzodiazepines with specific focus on stage 3 and 4 sleep, the stages where memory consolidation occurs. GHB, it explains, is a potent initiator of those stages. Benzos suppress them almost to zero, impairing memory through direct neurological effect. The memo advises Epstein on how to manage sleep and memory architecture using these substances. Thiel's note above the forwarded memo, last night was a lot of fun, as always. EFTA 023-87645, his physician address, Thiel Capital LLC, 1 Letterman Drive, The Presidio, San Francisco. The same Presidio where Michael Aquino's Temple of Set was headquartered? The same place with the daycare? And in 2016, Epstein's Circle was meeting with psychedelic researchers to plan DMT experiments on this agenda. But this is the craziest part. The victims. 3 women connected to the Epstein case. No documented coordination between them. And all 3 independently chose the same symbol? Juliet Bryant, an Epstein trafficking survivor who testified publicly on CBS News, who described waking up paralyzed on a table at Zorro Ranch surrounded by people in hazmat suits. She named her memoir Blue Butterfly. A writer named Sarah McCarthy turned her account into a full memoir. Trine Day, an established publisher, signed it in May 2025. The pre-orders were going live in September. The release date was April 13th, 2026. But on January 26th of this year, 77 days before publication, Trine Day canceled the book. The stated reason? Sustained physical and electronic harassment of the author. Brian's own testimony is still on Amazon. The layer underneath was what got canceled. Virginia Giuffre sued Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She named Prince Andrew in court, and she won. Before the case became fully public, she posted publicly that she was not suicidal. She died in 2025. Her public profile image on X was a blue butterfly. Sarah Ransom is a British survivor who has spoken publicly about Epstein's network. She has a blue butterfly tattooed on her arm. In the documented research on these programs, the final tier is called Omega, the self-destruct protocol, triggered when the subject tries to expose the system. 3 women, supposedly not connected, independently chose the same symbol. And that pattern doesn't just appear in Epstein's network. We saw it in Hollywood, the music industry, and the programs that came before him. That is a lead. I'm not telling you what it means. I'm telling you it's there. What if Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the origin of all this? What if he was a node? A visible and eventually expendable piece of something that had been running for decades before he appeared. Kathy described the same template in the 1960s happening on Mackinac Island, Michigan. Remote island, controlled access, powerful visitors, blackmail operation. The governor at the time was George Romney, Mitt Romney's father. The survivor literally called Mackinac Island the Epstein Island of its day. So obviously it would seem that Epstein did not design this architecture. Here's what the system is. 3 layers. The first layer is the product. Young women, and in some cases young men, conditioned through trauma early enough that the brain forms around it. Compartmentalized, programmable. They perform on command and don't remember. They can't testify because of the architecture of what happened to them was built to prevent that. The second layer is the client. Senators, CEOs, royals, foreign leaders, intelligence directors, people whose decisions affect entire countries. You bring them into contact with the product, you document everything, and now you own them. They can't expose the system because the system owns them. Epstein wasn't just catching powerful men by accident. He was selecting the men who would run this country in 10 years and making sure their secrets were already on file before they got there. This is how the entire system runs. The third layer is the culture. Mass public programming. The music videos, the album covers, the artists who go through very public breakdowns, fragment publicly, emerge with a new persona on the other side, and become bigger than they ever were before. The culture layer normalizes the symbol. The symbol attracts the audience. The audience contains the next generation of product. Then, the product serves the clients. The clients stay owned, the system stays running. Jeffrey Epstein's whole mainstream story is that he was a predator who got lucky with rich friends. Well, he was an intelligence asset running a leverage operation, and an FBI document in the public files confirm it. That one fact explains everything. The Maxwell connection, the island running for 20 years. The investigation found him, but couldn't put together what he was embedded in. So the idea is, MKUltra did not end in 1973. It evolved. It morphed. And honestly, I worry the system realized they didn't need to just have individuals in the club. It could just cast them and program them. Celebrities with trigger personalities they don't know exist. The only way to stop this is with knowledge. Hey, Candace, I'm not attacking you, and I genuinely care. It's not my intention to discredit Candace. My one and only intention is to present the truth. That's it. You can go and verify it for yourself. I'm not here to make claims. I'm not here to hate whatsoever. If you've been watching Candace's series on Erica Kirk, The Bride of Charlie, you kinda get it. But let me just quote how she opened that series. She said, quote, "A young woman with absolutely zero professional qualifications has been inserted at the top of an organization that pulled in over $250 million, and the media is telling you that you have no right to know or to ask anything about her?" Then she said, quote, "The public simply wanting to ensure the person who is running that organization is, at a bare minimum, moderately honest about who she says she is. No, that inquiry makes you a monster." End quote. She asked all the right questions about Erica Kirk. Who is this woman? Who inserted her? Why can't we ask questions about her background? Well, I'm gonna ask the same ones about Candace. But before I can show you who she married, I need to show you who she was. Okay, so Candace Owens. Candace grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. She went to the University of Rhode Island to study journalism, but dropped out after her junior year. Never finished a degree. After that, she moved to New York, got an internship at Vogue, worked her way up to a private equity firm in Manhattan, and during all of this, there was zero political involvement, zero conservative commentary, nothing really. She was just working in fashion and finance in New York. Then in 2015, she started a company called Degree 180. It was a marketing agency with a blog, and on the blog, Candace Owens published anti-conservative, anti-Republican, and openly anti-Trump content. She wrote about the batshit crazy antics of the Republican Tea Party. So that's what she thought of Republicans. She wrote that conservatives would, quote, "eventually die off peacefully in their sleep, we hope, and then we can get right on with the obvious social change that needs to happen immediately." So she was quite the activist. Now, I don't want to hold her to that, and again, I want to set the right tone here. We just need to look at the history. I'm not here to make judgments. People change, people grow, but it gets deeper than that. As late as 2016, publishing anti-Trump content, then praising Trump within 12 to 18 months. And now in 2025, she's back criticizing him over foreign policy. So what happened? In April 2016, Candace launched a Kickstarter for something called Social Autopsy. This is the hinge point of her entire career. Social Autopsy was a website designed to track online bullies by cataloging their real names next to screenshots of their offensive post. Think about what that actually is. It's a public doxing database. You submit a screenshot of someone being mean online, and it gets filed under their real name for anyone to search. She wanted $75,000. She raised about $4,000 before Kickstarter suspended the campaign for violating their terms of service. And the reaction was immediate. Everyone hated it. The privacy advocates, free speech people, left and right, all sides came at her. People started doxing Candace herself in retaliation, and Candace blamed the doxing on progressives. Specifically, she pointed at Zoe Quinn, a woman who had been attacked during Gamergate. Now, multiple outlets covered this at the same time, the Daily Beast, Vox, and the word they used was scant evidence. That's their assessment, not mine. And by blaming the left for attacking her, she was suddenly and instantly embraced by the Gamergate crowd. Anti-feminist, pro-Trump internet personalities, people like Milo Yiannopoulos, Mike Cernovich, and the emerging alt-right. So just to be clear about what just happened, a progressive woman tried to build a public doxing database, got attacked by her own side for it, blamed them for it, and overnight became a hero to the other side. The same crowd that should have hated the idea of a doxing website welcomed her with open arms because she pointed the finger at their enemy. That seems like her origin story. And listen to Candace's own words about what happened next. I became a conservative overnight. I realized that liberals were actually the racist. Liberals were actually the trolls. She said that to Dave Rubin. So let me get this straight. A woman that was blogging against Republicans and mocking Trump had her doxing business fail, blamed the left with scant evidence, and decided overnight that she was now a conservative? That was 2016. August 2017. Less than a year and a half later, she starts posting political videos on YouTube. September 2017. She launches a channel called Red Pill Black. Then she posts a vlog about the Charlottesville rally. It gets 80 million views. She comes out of nowhere, then gets 80 million views on this vlog. By the end of September, she's on Fox News with Jesse Waters. Zero political presence to 80 million views in Fox News in under 6 months. No experience, no established platform. Either that's the finest organic rise in political media history, or someone opened the doors. Now I don't know which, but let's look at what happened. November 2017. Charlie Kirk announces Candace Owens as communications director at Turning Point USA. So 14 months from failed doxing website to one of the most powerful conservative youth organizations in America? Who made that introduction? Nobody's ever answered that publicly. She launched Blexit. Kanye tweeted, "I love the way Candace Owens thinks." Every conservative stage, every Fox News panel. The machine was running at full speed. And then December 2018, she traveled to London with Charlie Kirk for the launch of Turning Point UK. And that's another event we all know. The one where she was attacked over the Austrian painter quote. Now I'm not going to repeat it because that's leftist stuff. You guys know what happened. Multiple TPUSA campus chapters called for a resignation. She would leave TPUSA in May 2019. After that, she joins the Daily Wire in 2021. So she basically stays on script for 3 years, then she clashes with Shapiro in March 2024, and then leaves. She posts, "I'm finally free." By 2025, she's calling Trump a chronic disappointment. She says she's embarrassed she told people to vote for him. Goes fully independent, launches her own show, starts her own Epstein series. That's the career arc. From anti-Trump blogger to conservative overnight, to TPUSA, to Daily Wire, to independent, to the biggest conspiracy theorist in the world. But rewind to that London trip in December 2018. Because while everyone was talking about the comments, something else happened. Candace sat down at a dinner table next to a man she never met before. His name was George Farmer. So apparently, here's what happened next. The Turning Point UK launch was held on December 11th, 2018 at the Royal Automobile Club on Pall Mall in London. The person who organized this event was a man named John Mappin. He's the heir to the Mappin & Webb jewelry fortune, one of the oldest luxury brands in England. And he's a reported Scientologist. He's also a known QAnon promoter. That's who put together the event where Candace met her future husband. Candace had actually been in London doing media all day. She was taping Russell Brand's podcast that same day and showed up late. And at a dinner organized by Paul Joseph Watson, the InfoWars contributor, she sat next to George Farmer. He was the chairman of Turning Point UK, the British version of Charlie Kirk's operation. He was the money guy. He was already installed before Candace and Kirk flew over. Candace later described it as love at first sight. December 12th, they have dinner alone. December 29th, George Farmer proposes to Candace Owens via FaceTime. 18 days after meeting her for the first time. February 14th, 2019, the engagement is publicly announced on Valentine's Day. In May 2019, George runs as a Brexit Party candidate for European Parliament. He doesn't win, but it tells you where his political ambitions are. August 6th, 2019, private ceremony. August 31st, 2019. The celebration at Trump Winery near Charlottesville, Virginia. Eric Trump's the president of the winery. And look at the guest list. Nigel Farage, the leader of the Brexit Party, John Voight, Charlie Kirk, Larry Elder, Paul Joseph Watson, and Jerry Falwell Jr., the president of Liberty University who would later resign in his own scandal. They wore red Make Weddings Great Again hats. From first handshake to wedding, 264 days. Less than 9 months. From first handshake to proposal, 18 days. And when asked why, George said he heard a voice telling him to propose. So a voice told him. Now maybe it is just love at first sight. Maybe God really did just tell him. But before you decide that, you need to know who George Farmer actually is. Because once you do, the 18 days starts looking very different. Okay, so George Farmer. Most Candace fans couldn't tell you a single thing about this man. His full legal name is George Thomas Stahel Farmer. Born in London, went to St. Paul's School, one of the oldest and most elite private schools in England, founded in 1509. From there he went to St. Peter's College, Oxford, to study theology. Got a first-class honors degree, which means he wasn't just at Oxford to party. He was academically serious. But remember that name, Stahel. We'll come back to it. But first, his father. And where he comes from is a level of wealth and political power that most people have never been anywhere near. George's father is Michael Stahel Farmer, and as of September 5th, 2014, his official title is Baron Farmer of Bishopsgate in the City of London. He sits in the House of Lords. He is a life peer in the British government. Lord Farmer made his fortune in metals trading. His nickname in the industry was Mr. Copper, because at one point, his company was the single largest trader of physical copper and nickel on the planet. He ran this operation from 1989 to 2000, and in 2000, he sold it. Guess who bought it? Enron, for $448 million. Yes, that Enron. And what's wild is Lord Farmer cashed out right before Enron collapsed. He sold at the absolute peak, after Enron imploded and destroyed thousands of people's pensions and savings. Lord Farmer walked away with $448 million and went on to co-found a hedge fund called Red Kite Group, which at its peak was managing $3.5 billion and was supplying roughly 15% of China's copper consumption. The family is worth an estimated £150 million, 12-bedroom London mansion, properties in France, Morocco, Belgium, and a large estate in Tennessee where Candace and George now live. Now here's the thing. How did Lord Farmer get his title? Lord Farmer is one of the largest individual donors in the history of the British Conservative Party. He donated over £6.4 million. Some sources put it as high as $8 to $9 million when you include all affiliated donations. He served as co-treasurer of the Conservative Party from 2011 to 2015. And on September 5th, 2014, while he was still serving as party treasurer, he was created a life peer, Baron Farmer of Bishopsgate in the City of London, and given a permanent seat in the House of Lords. There's an investigation by Open Democracy that looked into this pattern. What they found is that every single former Conservative Party treasurer who donated at least £3 million was offered a seat in the House of Lords. Every one. And Lord Farmer, when the Sunday Times asked him about this directly, quote, "There has been a tradition of ennobling party treasurers," end quote. A tradition? And in the House of Lords, Lord Farmer has voted 81 times. He has never once voted against the Conservative Party whip. 81 for 81. Before the marriage, George was a partner at Red Kite, his father's hedge fund, from July 2017. He reportedly made £5 million in profit in a single month. After the marriage, the career gets interesting. He co-founded Redfield and Wilton Strategies, a political polling firm, in January 2020, then he became COO and later CEO of Parler, the free speech social media platform, from March 2021 to April 2023. Then he became the executive director and shareholder of GB News, the UK media outlet, from September 2023. So that's hedge fund, polling, social media platform, news network. All in 5 years. But publicly, I'm exclusively interested in faith. Now go back to the 18 days. Now can we be real? A woman who became conservative overnight in 2016, whose entire political career was 14 months old, who had just embarrassed herself with the you-know-who comments and was being pushed out of TPUSA, sits next to this man at a dinner his organization arranged, and within 18 days, the son of a lord whose family is worth 150 million pounds decides she's the one. Now the name. Shahel. Lord Farmer's full name is Michael Shahel Farmer. George is George Thomas Shahel Farmer. Every generation carries that name. The Shahel surname is Swiss. 61% concentrated in the canton of Zurich, records going back to the 13th century. But what I can tell you is, the name is Swiss, and it's centuries old. And this family carried it from the continental European commodity trading world into the British House of Lords in one generation. Okay, but let's talk about what George did at Oxford, because this is the part that neither Candace nor George ever talk about. At Oxford University, George Farmer was the president of the Bullingdon Club. Now, if you're American, you may not know what this is, but if you're British, you know exactly what this is, and you know it means something very specific about a person who was in it. The Bullingdon Club was founded around 1780, all male, invitation only. You can't apply, you have to come from one of the wealthiest families in the country, and existing members select you. The uniform alone cost £3,500. So what do? They hold grand dinners at expensive venues, and then they destroy them. That's the tradition. Smash the place up, pay for the damage in cash. The initiation involves members invading your room and destroying everything you own while you watch. Police have been called to Bullingdon events. George Farmer was president in 2010 when police were called to Hartwell House Hotel for criminal damage. Okay, but here's why any of this matters. There's some important people in this club. 2 kings, Edward VII and Edward VIII. 3 prime ministers, David Cameron, Boris Johnson, Archibald Primrose, the 5th Earl of Rosebery. 2 chancellors of the Exchequer, George Osborne, Lord Randolph Churchill, Winston Churchill's father, Nat Rothschild. That's the photo they tried to suppress during their political careers. Cameron, Boris, all of them. This club has produced more British heads of state per capita than any organization in the country. So for Americans, this is basically Skull and Bones at Yale. Same structure, same function, 3 US presidents from Skull and Bones, 3 UK prime ministers, and 2 kings from the Bullingdon Club. George Farmer was the president of it. Now we're just getting started. There's an email in the EFT archives, EFTA 02416209. It's from a man named Nick Lees writing to Jeffrey Epstein. Now Lees was close to Epstein. Epstein called him my boy. He was based in Singapore. And in this email, Lees is discussing British politics and he writes, quote, Eton, Oxford, Bullingdon running the country. What a wheeze. That's a private email to Epstein from a man he considered family. And in a separate email from the same Nick Lees, he introduces Jeffrey Epstein to a woman named Nicole Junkermann. If you know about Epstein research, you've probably heard that name. Junkermann is a known Epstein associate connected to Ehud Barak. Lees writes to Epstein, my great friend Nicole Junkermann is considering moving to Singapore. May I have her call you? EFTA 02414840. I'm gonna call this one the Rosetta Stone. Prince Andrew writes to Epstein, quote, "You should know that I was seeing David Rowland, my trusted money man who you should know from a long time ago. He saw Hugo Swire, the new Minister of State Northern Ireland, and Hugo asked him a very direct question about whether or not I was still seeing you. David Rowland, Conservative Party's largest donor and designated treasurer, forced to resign because the press called him a shady financer. Prince Andrew calls him my trusted money man, and Hugo Swire, a Foreign Office minister, is asking whether Andrew is still seeing Epstein." In the same email chain, Epstein writes to Andrew, "I know you're seeing Jess Staley this morning. He's like family and can be trusted." Jess Staley, JP Morgan CEO, later Barclays CEO, like family. The documents show he visited Epstein's Island with his wife, flight numbers in EFTA 020-25420. He sent his daughter's resume to Epstein. Epstein writes back to Andrew about Swire. "I used to shoot with Hugo. His great friend, Nick Lees, is coming to see me next week." Shooting parties with a Foreign Office minister, and Nick Lees, who jokes about bullying and running the country, is the same Nick Lees Epstein then connects to Nicole Junkerman. Junkerman, EFTA 02342424, forwards surveillance tech updates to two people, Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister, and Jeffrey Epstein. Same email, same time. EFTA 024-26782. Nat Rothschild, Bullingdon Club, sends a private deal called Project Concordia to Jess Staley at JP Morgan. Lord Mandelson forwards the entire chain to Epstein with two words. Interesting. Protect. EFTA 018896668. Remember I said George Osborne, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Bullingdon Club? His chief of staff was a man named Ian Osborne. And Ian Osborne emailed Jeffrey Epstein directly. Subject line, confidential. Quote, "I spoke to George Osborne. He is certain that Jess's name was never put to him for a yes-no on Barclays, and he's equally certain that he would not have opposed it." So the Chancellor of Exchequer's own chief of staff feeding confidential information about banking appointments to Jeffrey Epstein. About Jess Staley, the same man Epstein called like family. And in a separate email, EFTA 018763005, Epstein's assistant Leslie Groff writes, quote, "You have mentioned Ian Osborne and Peter Thiel." The same Ian Osborne arranging Peter Thiel meetings for Epstein while feeding him confidential intelligence from the Chancellor's office. EFTA 024-18723. Prince Andrew brokering David Rowland's Luxembourg private bank to Epstein for, quote, "your undecided Chinese?" Andrew writes, "Perhaps this is an avenue for your undecided Chinese," and he agrees that concentration should be on who pays who and when. And Lord Mandelson himself, EFTA 018-38629, states directly that, quote, "Lord Mandelson was introduced to Mr. Epstein a decade before by his then partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, who along with her father and other members of her family, Lord Mandelson had known for many years." Ghislaine Maxwell was personally introducing British lords to Jeffrey Epstein. And in another email, Mandelson writes to Epstein, quote, "Need a lord on the board?" And in a separate document, Epstein asked Mandelson to arrange a House of Lords tour for his 15-year-old goddaughter. And Mandelson's first question, the very first thing he writes back is, "How old?" How old? Now what's her name? Now when does she want to come? How old? Yeah. And then there's EFTA 000-37470. This is a UK National Crime Agency intelligence report sent to the FBI in June 2020. It's about a woman named Claire Guinness, or Lady Claire Iva, Countess of Iva, married into the Guinness brewing dynasty. Quote, Claire Iva was allegedly a close contact of Epstein and traveled and stayed with him on multiple occasions. And her current position, the one the NCA flagged in the report, President of the NSPCC, the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, the UK's main child protection charity. In the emails, she's sending Epstein property listings. Coco Chanel's house in the south of France, and she writes, quote, you could put in super cool for girls, even without aircon. Smiley faces. The president of the child protection charity emailing Jeffrey Epstein about properties that are super cool for girls. Now I need to be clear, George Farmer is not in the Epstein files. His father, Lord Farmer, is not directly named in the EFTA documents. I'm not gonna fabricate a connection that doesn't exist. I'm not saying the Farmers are a part of any network. I'm saying this is the world they operate in. And this world has documents. The exact same role Lord Farmer held, Conservative Party treasurer, that's Prince Andrew's trusted moneyman in the files. The club that George Farmer ran is in the files. That's the one Epstein Circle jokes about running the country. In the House of Lords that his father was given a seat in, that's where Mandelson asked, how old, about a 15-year-old girl. So can we all be honest? 18 days is a little strange. Not just a little. 9 months later, she's married at a Trump property with the leader of Brexit as a guest. And both of them call it love at first sight. God's plan. A voice told him. In December 2024, episode 119, George sat down for his first real interview in over 5 years of marriage, and he said this, quote, there are many different women I'm married to because I'm never quite sure who I'm gonna get in one day. You know, it's like someday I'm gonna get one personality, and the next day it's this personality. And then you've got your investigative journalist hat on, and then you've got your mother's hat on, and then you've got your Catholic hat on. He's joking, it's a husband joke, but given everything this series has covered about programming, about people who switch between personas depending on who's watching, I'll let you sit with that. Now, in my opinion, from what I've seen publicly, the on-camera dynamic between her and Charlie reads differently than her and George. That's not evidence. I'm not in their house. I'll let you be the judge. Okay, so let me show you something. Back in July 2025, before the documents dropped, Candace launched a whole Epstein series, Dead Men Tell No Tales, 2.2 million views. The Midas Touch, 2 million. Why did they change their tune on Epstein? 1.8 million. So she's building up, she has all this anticipation, millions of people watching, so she's building herself up essentially as an Epstein researcher, the one to go through the files when they come out. February 1st, 2026, 3 million documents drop. Now let's see what she did after that. In 6 weeks, she's uploaded around 100 videos. Bride of Charlie episodes 1, 5.3 million views, episode 2, 3.4, episode 3, 2.8, and then an open letter to Erica Kirk, 3.9 million. 7 full episodes, plus 20-something clips, all Erica Kirk, over 30 million views just on the Kirk content. Her ball episode did 2.8 million, but look at the description. It's Jay-Z on the Epstein list. Nicki Minaj says your favorite artists are in a satanic cult. In the Charlie Kirk assassination timeline. It's just entertainment. That's not a woman researching, going through the filings. She launched Bride of Charlie to go after Erica Kirk. She accused a dead man's widow of being an intelligence plant. She suggested Erica has connections to Epstein through a modeling agency. TPA USA said Erica never worked there, and no verified evidence has been presented publicly. And the episode where she tried to make that connection, did Erica Kirk know Jeffrey Epstein? Dropped on March 11th, 2026. Candace posted about Project Monarch on X, talking about how the world will soon know. Now, people may see this as good. However, look at the language she is using and the direction. Then that means she might know what's in the files about her husband's world. She told you she knows all about Project Monarch. Okay, then make the video. Not about Erica Kirk, about this. About the Bullingdon Club. About the Bull. About everything we just showed you. Your fans deserve that. And I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's building up to it. So she made the video, Bail So Hard. And on March 12th, she tweets some wild stuff about bail to Ben Shapiro. So you guys know she talks about bail constantly. Okay, so let me show you some crazy stuff, because I don't think she's looked hard enough. Now look at her husband's club, the Bullingdon Club. Say it slowly. Bullingdon. The oldest records spell it Bullsden in 1179, Bullandina in 1231. English Place Name Society records it as Bull's Valley from Old English. The club's nickname is the Buller. Airmail ran a headline about them. You mess with the Buller, you get the horns. In Oxford itself, the city where this club operates, Oxford comes from Old English Oxenoforda, Ford of the Oxen, the Bull Club in the Ox City. Now look where his father operates. Lord Farmer's full title is Baron Farmer of Bishopsgate in the City of London. And the City of London is not regular London. It is a 1 square mile financial enclave with its own charter from 1067. That's older than the Magna Carta. It has its own police force, it has business-dominated elections where companies vote, not just people. And it has something called the Remembrancer, an unelected official who has sat in Parliament since 1571 protecting this city's interest. That is where Lord Farmer's title is anchored. And this square mile has been reset before. In 1666, the Great Fire burned for 4 days and destroyed 4/5 of the City of London. 13,200 houses, 87 churches, 52 guide halls. The entire medieval city was gone. And guess what? Only 6 people officially died. And keep in mind that 100,000 had already been wiped out by the plague the year before. So, back to back. 1665, plague. 1666, fire. Now the question is, who rebuilt it? The rebuild was controlled by a 6-man commission, and 2 of those men were Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke, both members of the Royal Society. The Royal Society was founded in 1660, just 6 years before the fire, and it grew out of something called the Invisible College, which is a term from the Rosicrucian pamphlets. Their founding member included Elias Ashmole, whose own diary confirms he was initiated into a Masonic lodge in 1646, and Sir Robert Moray, who Gresham College themselves described as, quote, soldier, scientist, spy, Freemason, and founder of Royal Society. And they have a memorial they built that's 202 feet tall, exactly 202 feet from where the fire started. Yeah, why don't you multiply that by 3? It's not just a memorial. It was designed as a zenith telescope with an underground laboratory beneath it for gravity experiments. So it's a scientific instrument disguised as a public monument? And when Wren walked through the ruins of old St. Paul's Cathedral, he found a stone fragment with one word on it. Resurgam, Latin for I shall rise again. He carved that word and the phoenix into the new cathedral. Order out of chaos. And underneath that square mile, 7 meters below Bloomberg's European headquarters on Walbrook Street, there's a Roman temple, built around 240 AD, discovered in 1954 on a World War II bomb site. It's a temple to Mithras. Let me walk you through what this actually was, because most people have only heard the name and maybe seen the image. Mithraism was a mystery religion in ancient Roman times focused on the god Mithras that dominated the Roman Empire for centuries. It was the religion of the military, of officers, of administrators, of the people who actually ran things. And it was entirely secret. Now, Surface Wiki will only tell you so much, but essentially, this is an ancient cult with a bull sacrifice ritual with the purpose of creating a god. Sounds crazy, but stay with me. You see this? That image is called a tauroctony. Mithras drives the dagger into the bull's throat. A scorpion is clamped onto the bull's private parts, attacking its generative power. A dog and a snake are drinking directly from the open wound, consuming the blood. A raven watches from above as the messenger. And from the body of the bull, from its spinal cord and blood, wheat and vine grow. Life from death, generation from sacrifice. Now the question is, why do we see the same Phrygian cap on Mithras that we see on the Magi in every Renaissance fresco? Why is that same cap worn by the French Masons and assigned to Libertas? Are we not supposed to notice this? Let's go deeper. Do you know what a taurobolium is? It's kind of hard to find if you don't know where to look. The fossa sanguinis, the pit. They dig a trench into the ground and cover it with a wooden platform with holes drilled through it. Then, the initiate goes down into the pit. A bull is led onto the platform above them and sacrificed with a consecrated spear. And everything that comes out of that animal pours down through the perforations into the person below. The 4th century poet Prudentius, who saw this with his own eyes, describes what happens next. They emerge from the pit, renatus in aeternum, reborn for eternity, purified of all past actions, regarded as the equal of God, reborn. At the soldier grade, they brand a cross into your forehead with a hot iron to mark you as property of the deity. 7 grades of initiation. Corax the Raven, through Pater the Father. Each one compartmentalized so you only knew the mysteries of your own level and below. Keep in mind, this was not a fringe religion on the edges of the empire. This was the dominant faith of the Roman military and administrative class. The temples cluster along every militarized frontier: Hadrian's Wall, the Rhine, the Danube, North Africa. The people who actually ran the empire were in these underground temples around the sacrifice of a bull. And when the Catholic Church suppressed Mithraism in the 4th century, it didn't disappear. It changed form. The historian H.L. Haywood traced the transmission from Mithraism into Manichaeism, and then into the Paulicians, then into the medieval Cathars and Waldensians, underground movements that were hunted as heretics for centuries but never fully destroyed. Then the Knights Templar. 9 ranks, accusations of secret initiation rituals and idol worship so specific that mainstream historians still argue about whether they were fabricated or real. Let's remember that even Crowley claimed Baphomet, the idol the Templars were accused of worshipping, was derived from Father Mithras, Pater Mithras, the highest grade of the cult. And then, Freemasonry. Albert Pike, the most authoritative Masonic writer who ever lived, in Morals and Dogma, 1871, explicitly describes the Mithraic 7-grade ladder as a Masonic symbol. 7 altars consecrated to 7 planets. The candidate passing through 7 stages of initiation through fearful trials. He called Freemasonry the modern era of the ancient mysteries. That's the supreme commander of the Scottish Rite. Michael Tessarian maps this all out. Adonism, to Mithras, to Sol Invicti, to Christianity, to Templarism, to Freemasonry, to the British Empire. Same cult, different centuries, different clothes. Okay, so now let's talk about British intelligence. The structure of MI5 and MI6 is the Mithraic structure. Compartmentalized information, need to know clearance levels, graded hierarchy, oath-bound secrecy, recruitment by selection, not application, secular rank irrelevant inside the apparatus. And even the Nazis knew it. Heinrich Himmler was obsessed with the idea that British intelligence was being run as a Rosicrucian order with occult adepts in charge of MI5. And was he wrong? John Dee, 1527 to 1608, Queen Elizabeth's court astronomer, alchemist, ceremonial magician, and spy, signed his intelligence letters to the Queen with the symbol 007. This is where Ian Fleming got it. Aleister Crowley, confirmed MI5 and MI6 asset, declassified US military intelligence files, says he was an employee of the British government on official business. Crowley is the one who said Baphomet comes from Pater Mithras. His disciple, Maxwell Knight, ran MI5's counter-subversion section B5B and is widely considered to be the model for M in the Bond novels. Knight brought the occult novelist Dennis Wheatley into Churchill's wartime deception planning. Fleming knew all of them, based Le Chiffre on Crowley's appearance, named his agent after Dee's signature, and devised a plan with Knight to use Crowley to interrogate captured Nazi Rudolf Hess by exploiting Hess's known obsession with the occult. This is documented in Richard Spence's Secret Agent 666. And then there's the Bullingdon. I would assume that Candace has heard of it. Now, I don't know how much she knows, but I do remember seeing this clip, which is pretty crazy. It would seem Candace knows about Tartaria.
I don't really know what's up and what's down, to be honest with you. I don't even believe in the moon landing.
Tartaria.
So, there you go. There's another one. There's something there. That's very funny. That would.
Not kidding.
Okay, but I already showed you who was in it. The kings, the prime ministers, the Rothschilds, and we went over the EFTA connections. But let's go a little deeper. So if you know what Tartaria is, then you'll understand. They destroy old world buildings. It's literally a destruction club, a vandalism club. I went through every documented Bullingdon incident on record that I could find, and in 1894, they smashed 468 windows in Peckwater Quad at Christ Church. That building is Grade 1 listed, one of the earliest examples of Palladian architecture in England, built in 1706 on a site that goes back to 1246. Grade 1 is the highest designation in the country. Only 2.5% of all protected buildings receive it. In 2005, they destroyed a pub called the White Hart in Fifield, Grade 2 star, built around 1442 as a charitable hospital for the poor. Princess Diana's nephew organized that dinner and he got fined £80. In 2010, they vandalized the Hartwell House, another Grade 1, a Jacobean mansion from 1570 where the exiled King of France signed the document accepting his crown. They started a fire inside the King's Arms, Oxford's oldest pub, licensed since 1607. They trashed the Tudor Room at Weston Manor, a 15th century manor built inside a 13th century moat. Every single venue on record is a historically protected building. They don't just smash up chain restaurants. It would seem they go after old world architecture. And the newspapers in 1894 described the morning after Peckwater Quad as looking like, quote, the explosion of a bomb. The initiation follows the exact pattern we just traced. Mithras, to the Templars, to Freemasonry, death, and rebirth. I already told you about the initiation, how they destroy your room while you watch. Why? And what does that even mean? Radek Sikorski, who went on to become the foreign minister of Poland, describes what happened to him. He said in the middle of the night, a dozen screaming figures burst into his room and demolished everything he owned. And then after everything was destroyed, Boris Johnson walked up, shook his hand, and said, "Congratulations, man. You've been chosen." So in a way, that's the rebirth. Think about it. What other logical explanation is there for doing this? It makes no sense. And the landlord of that pub they destroyed in 2005 said, each time I pulled one of them out of the melee, they apologized to me and were extremely polite, but then jumped right back in. It seems like some kind of ritual. So why are they doing rituals? Apparently, members also swear a code of silence they call omerta. Boris Johnson, when reminded of the club, reportedly whispers omerta, omerta under his breath. An insider who spoke to the Daily Beast called it, quote, institutionalized bad behavior where you're rewarded for getting drunk and doing as much damage as possible. Institutionalized? That's fraternal language. This is what you want to be connected with, Candace? And if so, why won't you talk about it in more detail? I do see that you're talking about Freemasons and rituals related to Charlie Kirk, but this is definitely all connected. Evelyn Waugh attended Oxford in the 1920s and watched the Bullingdon firsthand. He put them in his novel, Decline and Fall, as the Bullinger Club, and described their dinners as the sound of the English county families baying for broken glass. Tom Dryburgh, who was there at Oxford with Waugh, said his satire was, quote, a mild account of the night of any Bullingdon Club dinner in Christchurch. Such a profusion of glass I never saw until the height of the Blitz. He's talking about the German bombing of London in World War II. After 1894, the club was banned from meeting within 15 miles of Oxford. Yet they came back. Winston Churchill himself, speaking in Parliament in 1910, this is Hansard, the permanent record. He said the sons of other classes may commit many of the same kind of offenses, and in boisterous and exuberant moments, whether at Oxford or anywhere else, may do things for which the working classes are committed to prison. Basically, we're the elite class and we can do what we want. If the working class does this, you go to prison. Also, did you know that there is a Masonic lodge at Oxford called Apollo University Lodge number 357? You can only join if you've matriculated at the university. 3 Bullingdon Club members were initiated into this one lodge. Prince Leopold, Queen Victoria's youngest son, Bullingdon member, initiated into Apollo Lodge in May 1874. Provincial Grand Master of Oxfordshire by age 22. The Masonic press was openly discussing making him Grand Master of all England before he died at 30 from hemophilia. His brother, Edward VII, Grand Master of England for 27 years, personally proposed him for membership. Roger Lumley, 11th Earl of Scarborough, in the 1925 Bullingdon Club photograph, initiated into the same Apollo Lodge on the 3rd of May 1923. Roger Lumley became the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England, the highest Masonic office in the country, for 16 years, 1951 to 1967. He achieved what Leopold was being groomed for before he died: Bullingdon dinner jacket to Grand Master's regalia. And then Cecil Rhodes, Bullingdon member, initiated into Apollo Lodge in 1877. And on the same day he became a life member, the same day he sat down and wrote what he called his Confession of Faith. In it, he wrote, I become a member of the Masonic Order. I see the wealth and power they possess. Why should we not form a secret society with but one object? The furtherance of the British Empire. And then this. We should have its members placed at our universities and our schools and should watch the English youth passing through their hands. And he did it. The Society of the Elect in 1891, modeled on the Jesuits and Freemasonry, which became the Round Table movement, which became the Rhodes Scholarship, which is still operating out of Oxford today. And it's not just the Bullingdon Club. There's a web. The Gridiron Club, founded 1884, the political networking arm. David Cameron was a member of both the Bullingdon and the Gridiron simultaneously, 1987 to 1988. He ran the Destruction Club and the Power Club at the same time. John le Carré, the spy novelist, was a gridiron member while working for both MI5 and MI6 as a student at Oxford. Rory Stewart, gridiron member, his father was vice chief of MI6, and Stewart chaired something called La Cercle, a secret invitation-only foreign policy forum that the conservative MP Alan Clark described in his diaries as, quote, funded by the CIA. Stewart never declared this to Parliament. Then there's the Piers Gaveston Society, named after the rumored lover of King Edward II. There's 12 members. Guests loaded onto buses with blacked out windows and driven to a field. Phones confiscated. NDAs signed? The events are described as transgressive. Cameron was allegedly in this one too. Gottfried von Bismarck, great-grandson of the German Chancellor, was in both the Piers Gaveston and the Bullingdon. And underneath all of these, the oldest one, the Phoenix Common Room at Brasenose College, founded 1782. Again, 12 members. Brown tailcoats. A silver phoenix figurine sits at the table as their 13th member. In the 1820s, Brasenose housed its own Hellfire Club chapter with satanic toast. 2 members died in connection with devil worship rituals. Edward Lee Trafford in 1834 and John Woodhouse in 1840. Woodhouse reportedly died upon toasting the devil and was found dragged through the bars of a window. The satanic toasts were abolished after that. Now that Hellfire chapter at Brasenose wasn't the original. The real Hellfire Club was founded by Sir Francis Dashwood in the 1740s. He called it the Order of the Friars of St. Francis of Wickham. They met at Medmenham Abbey on the Thames, a ruined Cistercian monastery that Dashwood rebuilt specifically for the order. And above the entrance he carved a phrase, "Do what thou wilt." Aleister Crowley used the exact same words as the central law of his religion Thelema 150 years later. It would seem Crowley inherited it from Dashwood, who took it from Rabelais, who wrote it as the motto of a fictional abbey in 1534. But apparently, Dashwood made it real. He built the abbey in stone. Interestingly, Candace talks about this. She calls them Frankist. Jacob Frank, 18th century, a sect whose central doctrine was redemption through sin. Cross every line, break every law, that's how you reach God. She calls it a satanic cult masquerading as something else. Same doctrine, same century. Dashwood carved "Do what thou wilt" above a door in England in the 1740s, and Frank was preaching redemption through sin in Poland in the 1750s. She's looking at the 18th century version of this philosophy in Eastern Europe. The English version was meeting at a rebuilt abbey on the Thames. The membership of Dashwood's Hellfire Club reads like government. The Earl of Sandwich, the First Lord of the Admiralty running through Royal Navy, the Earl of Bute, Prime Minister by 1762, John Wilkes, the most famous radical politician in England, and Benjamin Franklin. Franklin visited Medmenham multiple times during his years in London. In 1998, during renovations of Franklin's London house at 36 Craven Street, workers found the remains of at least 10 people buried in the basement, 6 of them children. Underneath Dashwood's estate at West Wickham, the caves are still there. They're a quarter mile deep into the chalk, opening into a series of chambers, the last one called the Inner Temple, and to reach it you cross an underground river they named the River Styx, the River of the Dead. You cross it, you enter the temple, you come back reborn. But think about it. Oxford, Oxenoforda, the ford of the oxen, the Ox City. And in the Ox City, a fraternal order that destroys Grade 1 listed Old World architecture as its initiation ritual, whose members swear omerta. 3 of them walked into the same Masonic lodge, and 2 of them became Grand Masters of English Freemasonry. And the 3rd built his own secret society and put it in his will. And keep in mind, the motto of the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, the highest degree, order out of chaos. And apparently, George Farmer was the president of this Bull Club. The son of Baron Farmer of Bishopsgate in the city of London, the square mile above the temple of the bull-slaying god, ran the Bull Club in the Ox City, and he proposed to Candace Owens in 18 days. Now there's one more layer. I promise I'm not reaching. There's a movement called British Israelism. It was huge in the 19th and early 20th century among the British elite, and it claims the British descend from the lost tribes. In England specifically, they identify as the tribe of Ephraim, and Ephraim's tribal symbol in Jewish tradition is the bull. Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 17. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock. And Michael Tessarian, crazy how we've come full circle, calls British Israelism one of the cult of Aton's chief propaganda organs, a tool used to justify British imperial rule through biblical identity. Now, whether you believe that framework or not, the bull symbol runs through British elite culture. You can't unsee it once you see it. John Bull is the national personification of England. The bulldog is the national animal. Even the Vatican governs through papal bulls. Now look at this. The Rothschild coat of arms. A lion on the left, a unicorn on the right. Those are the same supporters on the royal coat of arms of the United Kingdom. Now in Jewish tribal tradition, the lion is the symbol of the tribe of Judah. The unicorn, okay, so listen, the unicorn in heraldry comes from the same verse I just read you. Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 17. His glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. The bull and the unicorn are the same animal. Biblical scholars in the Brit-Am Hebrew Nations Project have documented this. The Hebrew word re'em, that gets translated as unicorn in the King James Bible, also translates as wild bull or wild ox. It referred to the auroch, a massive wild bovine that went extinct, and apparently when artists who had never seen one tried to draw it from a description, a huge horned beast, they drew a horse with one horn. The unicorn is the bull seen in profile. 2 horns become one. And remember Nathaniel Rothschild? Nat was in Bullingdon Club at Oxford alongside David Cameron, Boris Johnson, and George Osborne. The same Nat Rothschild who appears in the Epstein files, the same one Peter Mandelson told Epstein he'd been seeking advice from, and Epstein himself wrote to Peter Thiel in 2016. This is in the DOJ document release, EFTA 023-87645. As you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds. Les Wexner testified under oath to the House Oversight Committee that he gave Epstein power of attorney based on, and I quote, his personal work for the Rothschild family in France. So the family whose coat of arms carries the bull of Ephraim and the lion of Judah, whose scion sat in the Bull Club at Oxford, whose name appears throughout the Epstein files, that family is the one Jeffrey Epstein told people he represented? Don't you get it? The bull. Bull worship. From ancient Canaanites to Mithras to modern secret societies. And it would apparently seem the woman who tells 6 million subscribers about Baal worship married into a world that sits at the intersection of all of it. Anti-Trump blogger, doxing website fails, conservative overnight, TP USA in 14 months, 80 million views in 6 months, engaged in 18 days to the president of the Bullingdon Club, Bulls Valley, the Buller, married at Trump Winery in 9 months. His father, Baron Farmer of Bishopsgate in the city of London, above the temple of the bull-slaying god, 7 meters below Bloomberg, and she makes an episode called Ball So Hard. She made a series called The Bride of Charlie. She investigated who Charlie Kirk married, who she really was, where she came from, and what the connections look like. I just did the same thing to her. Her husband said it herself. There are many different women I'm married to. I'm never quite sure who I'm gonna get. And she told you. Overnight. And so, why does the person with the biggest platform in this space marry into it?